It's one of those simple lines that you could just skim past, but it's actually the key that unlocks this entire story, a story about deep, dark loneliness and a kind of terror that gets all tangled up between what's real and what's just a memory.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to break down a really unsettling Hindi horror story. It's all about a guy named Gopal, a huge, creepy mansion that basically becomes his prison, and this presence that starts stalking him from right outside his window.
So the way we hear this story is through a narrator named Sakaram, who's a traveling salesman. And one day, just completely out of the blue, he bumps into someone from his past, a guy he hasn't laid eyes on in 15 years, a quiet, kind of forgettable classmate named Gopal. But wow, this is not the kid Sakaram remembers from school. The Gopal standing in front of him now looks way older than he should. He's got this nervous energy, he's constantly wiping sweat off his face. It's just a shocking change. And it's pretty obvious that the last 15 years have been really, really rough on him. So of course Sakaram is wondering, what on earth happened to this guy?
Gopal seems just so happy to see a familiar face, almost desperately happy. He absolutely insists the Sakaram stay with him instead of at a hotel. And this is where things start to get a little weird. Gopal tells him he lives all by himself in this enormous old mansion, a haveli, that feels completely cut off from everything and is just dead silent.
Sakaram agrees to stay, and as soon as he steps inside this dusty, massive house, he starts to get a picture of why Gopal is the way he is. Turns out, Gopal's life has just been one tragedy after another.
Gopal's story starts off sad right from the get-go. He was basically sold by his poor family to some distant relatives. He had a kind aunt, but also a really cold and cruel uncle. And then, just a few years in, his aunt, the only person who ever showed him any love, died. That left him completely alone with this guardian who clearly couldn't stand him.
And this wasn't just, a lack of affection. This was something else. It was like he was being erased as a person. For years and years, Gopal was just treated like a piece of furniture, something his uncle was obligated to feed and clothe, but never ever to speak to or acknowledge as a human being.
But he did try to get out. He really did. After school, he left to try and make a life for himself, but it didn't work out, and he had to go back to that awful house. But then, he got a little spark of hope. He fell in love. And his uncle? In one single, cold-blooded 15-minute conversation with the woman, he just destroyed it, snuffed out the one good thing that had ever happened to Gopal. You'd think the uncle's death would have been a release, right? Well, no. Even from the grave, he found one last way to torture Gopal. The will was the ultimate trap. Gopal got all the money and the mansion, but with one cruel catch. He could never, ever leave. He was officially a prisoner for life in the very building that had ruined him.
So, with this incredibly heavy, awful backstory just hanging in the air, Sakaram tries to get some sleep. And this is where all that psychological pain starts to bubble up and turn into something real. Something terrifying. Gopal is begging him not to open the windows at night, but Sakaram just wants some fresh air, so he doesn't listen. He looks out across this empty, barren field behind the house, and he sees it. Just a single, still scarecrow, standing out there in the moonlight. Creepy, sure, but he doesn't think too much of it. The next morning, he glances out that same window, and the field is totally empty. The scarecrow is just gone. No sign of it anywhere. Kind of shrugs it off, but his mind starts going. I mean, who puts a scarecrow in an empty field just to take it down before morning? It makes no sense. Okay, so the second night rolls around, and this is where it gets really weird. Sakaram opens the window again. The scarecrow is back, but something's different. It's subtle, but it's horrifying. The first night, its left arm was sticking out. Tonight, it's the right arm. It's such a small detail, but think about what that means. It means something, or someone, is moving it. All right, that's it. Sakaram has had enough. He sneaks outside to figure out what is going on. He walks around the whole property, he goes right out into that empty field, and there's nothing there. The scarecrow is gone again. But then, this feeling hits him, this heavy, suffocating dread, like something huge and evil is just standing there in the dark, watching him.
He scrambles back to his room, totally freaked out. And he finally realizes that whatever's happening in this house, it isn't simple. It's time to actually break down what this fear is all about.
This really is the million-dollar question for the whole story, isn't it? Is there an actual ghost here, the spirit of that cruel uncle, still tormenting Gopal? Or is this all coming from a mind that has been broken by years and years of abuse and loneliness?
Gopal, of course, has his answer. He just completely loses it and confesses everything. He's convinced that his dead uncle is out there every single night, pacing around the house, trying to get in, to continue his revenge even after death.
But Sakaram, he comes up with a different theory, a really fascinating one. He doesn't think it's a ghost. He calls it poisonous memories. It's this idea that if you have decades of pure hatred shared between two people trapped inside the same house, that toxic emotion can actually soak into the walls and create an atmosphere so bad it feels like a real presence.
And that brings us right back to the scarecrow. It's not actually there. It's a projection. You know how you can look at clouds and see a face or an animal? It's like that. Their minds are so filled with fear that they're projecting it onto the darkness, giving it a shape they can recognize, a creepy, empty scarecrow.
So Sakaram realizes he can't help Gopal. The man just refuses to leave that house. He gives his old friend one last piece of advice: to just run, to get out and save his own life. And then he leaves, and he never sees Gopal again.
A few years go by, Sakaram happens to be in the same town again and decides to go see the old Haveli. But it's been completely transformed. It's all cleaned up, freshly painted. It's a corporate office now, full of people working. And the new tenants? They have no idea about its history. They say nothing strange has ever happened there. He asks around about what happened to Gopal, and the answer is just as sad as you'd expect. They found him dead in the Haveli weeks after he'd had a heart attack. He died completely and utterly alone, a prisoner right to the very end. And that's really the final chilling piece of the puzzle. The horror was never in the house itself. It was in the mind of the person stuck inside it. Once Gopal was gone, once there was nobody left to project all that fear and pain into the darkness, the poisonous memories just faded away. The haunting stopped because there was no one left to be haunted.
And so that's the question the story leaves us with. It kind of flips our whole idea of a ghost story on its head. It makes you wonder, are the scariest monsters the ones waiting for us in the dark, or are they the ones we've been carrying around inside of us the whole time?